When's the last time you got passed over for something you deserve and you watched someone who did less get the credit? Maybe it was a promotion, maybe it was a project you should have been tapped for, and maybe it was just recognition in a meeting that actually never came. And you sat there thinking, but I did the work. I showed up and I delivered on exactly what they wanted me to deliver on. You've been told your whole career that hard work speaks for itself. I'm here to tell you that it doesn't. And today I'm going to tell you why and what to do instead. Welcome back to Leadership Beyond the Title podcast. I'm Tashina. I'm a leadership coach, facilitator, and someone who has spent years helping professionals stop shrinking and start owning their value. Today, we're talking about something that makes a lot of my clients uncomfortable. It's how to package your accomplishment, not how to brag, not how to perform, but how to tell the story of what you've done in a way that actually lands to the listener. Because the truth that no one wants to actually say out loud is that the best storyteller actually wins. So let's get into it. So let me start with what I hear from my clients all the time. They come to me, and these beautiful women are smart, they're capable, they're high performing professionals. And when I ask them how they talk about their accomplishments, they always freeze. They say things like, well, I don't know, Tashina, it's just my job. I don't want to seem like I'm bragging at work. Like, that's not cute. Or I just put my head down and I do the work. Isn't that enough? And I have to tell them with all the love in me, it's not. Because while you are being humble, somebody else is telling your story for you. Or worse, no one's telling it at all. Let me break down the beliefs I see that keep accomplished women just like you invisible. The first one I hear is, it's just my job. Now, this is the idea that if something falls within your job description, it doesn't actually count as an accomplishment. So in your head, you're thinking, I'm just doing what I'm supposed to do. So why celebrate that item or that thing? But here's what that misses: how you did the work matters, what it took to do it matters. So the context, which is the obstacles, the decisions you made, that's the story that needs to be told. And if you don't tell it, nobody else is going to tell it either. The second belief that I hear is self promotion and talking about myself is so uncomfortable and it's actually kind of cringe. I hear this one a lot, especially from women and especially from women of color. We have been conditioned quite literally on how to stay humble. So we'll hear things or there'll be things that is insinuated to don't take up too much space or don't be too much or don't talk out loud or sit over here and just, pay attention. You can observe, but don't speak up. And so we confuse advocacy for arrogance because we're thinking now that the only options that we have are either bragging or silence. But there's an entire middle ground in that, and that's where strategic storytelling actually lives. And I'm going to talk about that and teach you how to do that. Well, the third belief is good work should speak for itself. This is literally the myth of meritocracy. That is the idea that if you just keep delivering, if you keep showing up, if you keep doing what you're supposed to do, somebody is sure to notice. But here's the reality in most organizations: nobody, I mean, nobody is tracking your contributions the way you think they are. Yes, they are going to notice every single time when you didn't do something, but when you're doing something, nobody's tracking that. And it's something with the system that is just so off. And so I don't agree with that. But I want you to know that it is true that nobody is looking at your contributions the way you think they are. The reality is your manager is busy. Your skip level doesn't know what you're working on. They just know that things got done or not. And if you were not narrating and sharing your story and sharing your value, it's just going to disappear somewhere. It's just going to be noise somewhere that nobody even pays attention to and nobody ever knows what's happening. Now, the fourth belief that I have for you is I don't want to seem like I'm competing. Any of y'all ever thought this or ever felt this way? This one is so sneaky because it's the fear that if you speak up about what you've done, you are somehow diminishing someone else, that you're not putting the spotlight on somebody else. That's when we all start talking French, talking about we did this, we did that, but we don't talk enough about what I myself, what I did. Okay. And so we start making it competition. We think it's competition by speaking up on behalf of ourselves. But advocating for yourself doesn't take anything away from anybody else. You can celebrate your wins and still be a team player. Those things are not mutually exclusive. So, if you've been holding back because of any of these beliefs, I want you to hear me loud and clear. You were not being humble. You're actually being invisible, and this is costing you so much in your career. So, let me paint this picture for you. Imagine that you are sitting in a courtroom. Maybe you're a juror, maybe you're somebody from the media, maybe you're just someone that knows the people that are part of the trial, or maybe you're just an observer. You just want to see how things go, right? And so you're sitting in the courtroom and the prosecution team comes out, the defense team come out, and the judge comes out, all rise, everyone sits down. And the judge looks over at the prosecution team and he says or she says, "Okay, let's get going. Let me see what you're working with." Now, I'm basing this off of just TV and what I've seen on TV and television shows. I've actually never been a juror or been in a courtroom to go through a trial or even seen one, but here we go. And so the judge calls on the prosecution team and they say, "Let's go. Let me hear your arguments." Imagine that the lawyer, the prosecutor comes, has a big, huge manila folder with a bunch of paperwork, sits it on the table and says, "This is the evidence I have. It speaks for itself. That defendant needs to be prosecuted. That defendant needs to go straight to jail. They can't pass go. They can't collect $200 monopoly. They are guilty." I know you're probably in that courtroom and you're thinking, "What? Like, what do you mean?" Right? What do you mean this is the minute this is all you have? This is all you're gonna say? You're just gonna say, like, the proof is here? This is exactly what we're doing in our organization. This is how I see many of us women of color moving in our organizations. We assume that somebody, just because they see that you come to work every single day, that somehow, some way, they know that you did an amazing job. Well, I'm here to tell you, unless you open up that manila folder, pull out those papers, show what you've done or the things that is evidence, nobody's going to understand or know that. We cannot afford to be the prosecutor who never positions themselves to show all the evidence and to make it clear how it goes together. The accomplishments, the things that do in your career or day to day in your job, those are things that are considered your evidence. And it's so important for you to learn how to communicate those things in the workplace. Let me tell you what's at stake here and what happens when you stay silent about your accomplishments, when you don't present the evidence before the judge, before the jurors, before the courtroom. Let me tell you what happens. First, other people are going to fill in the blanks. So just imagine this lawyer comes out with a stack of papers and they present it. Others are going to be like, I guess they don't have real evidence, or I guess there's nothing to see here and we're just here wasting our time. They're just going to fill in the blanks with whatever story they think and they believe. When you don't tell your story, your manager, your peers, your skip level, they are going to make assumptions. And those assumptions will rarely be in your favor. They might assume someone else did the heavy lifting. They might even assume you're just doing what's expected and there's nothing more that you contributed. And now they have this perception of you that is based on a story that you didn't even write, that you didn't even tell or communicate. That is what happens. The second thing is your work becomes completely invisible. And this is especially true if you're in a large organizations because there's so much happening. There's so many people, there's so many priorities. No one is sitting there keeping a running tally of everything you've contributed. And so if you're not communicating that story, it's just going to disappear like it has never even happened before. The third thing is that, quite honestly, ladies and gents, you are leaving money on the table. Let's be real. The promotions that you want, the bonuses that you want, the high visibility projects that you want, they're going to go to the people who make their value visible, not necessarily the people who are working the hardest. Okay. And that is such a truth that is hard. It's hard to hear, right? Because your work gets super hard. But when you don't communicate, you are not getting the recognition that you deserve. I've seen this happen way too many times. There's a person who knows how to communicate, they're packaging their work well, and they get the rating. And the person who did just as much or more, but didn't speak up, they get passed over. And that's not fair, but it's real. And the only way to change that is to learn the skill. And then fourth, you lose your sense of agency. This one is subtle, but it is very important because when you don't own your story, you start to believe the narratives others have created. You start to shrink. You think, oh, my work isn't worth anything. I'm not good enough. You stop advocating for yourself altogether and you start to feel like maybe you're not that valuable at all. And that's a lie. That is a huge, huge lie. But it's a lie that's going to take root when you let others define your worth, when you let others tell your story, when you let others say who you are. So, what's the move? What do we need to do? Well, you're already doing the work, you know what to do. That's not the problem. What you need now is the skill of storytelling at work. And I want to be clear about what I mean by that. I'm not talking about exaggeration. I'm not talking about performing. I'm not talking about becoming somebody that you're not. I'm talking about how do you frame your story that resonates for the listener. It's about helping people understand not just what you did, but why it mattered. It's about connecting the dots for them because they're not going to do it themselves. People are very focused on themselves. People are very one tunnel vision. You have to be able to put those puzzle pieces together and connect the story for them. You got to make the picture very clear. You got to make the vision plain. You got to let them know exactly what it is. This is strategically framing yourself, positioning yourself, and being strategic around storytelling. It's intentional, it's structured, and it's a skill, which means you can learn this skill. So you might be thinking, okay, I get it. I need to tell my story. When are the moments that actually call for this? So let me give you a few before we go into exactly how we do this storytelling thing. So, number one are performance reviews. So this one is an obvious one, but most people walk into reviews hoping that their manager remembers what they did, and they don't. Your manager is busy. They're managing multiple people. They have multiple reviews to administer. They're thinking about their own review. And so this is your moment to come prepared with 2 or 3 stories that actually show your value for them to actually hear it and resonate to them. Now, the hope is that you're not waiting for an annual review to tell these stories, but there are maybe 4 check-ins every quarter. There's some type of review-like process that you are doing to share the stories. And then at the end, when you have to bucket all together, your boss already remembers that you told that story before. Because again, stories click. Stories talk to the part of your brain. When somebody can see it, they remember it. So if you're telling great stories, what happens is that by the end of the year, your boss is going to remember that, because the hope is once you tell them every quarter, they're going to be telling everybody else. Okay. That's the hope. Now, number 2, you can use story in your one-to-ones. So you don't have to wait for annual review. Your one-on-ones are where you build the narrative over time, just like I said. So every few weeks, drop in a win. And it doesn't have to be like a braggy way, or it doesn't have to feel cringe. But it could sound like, here's something I'm proud of from this sprint, or I wanted to share how that project landed. You are literally planting seeds along the way so that when review time comes, none of it is a surprise. Okay. Now, the third way or place is that you can do this at skip level meetings. So when you get face to face with your boss's boss, you need to have a story ready. You need to literally pull it out of your back pocket and say, boom, this is the story that I want to tell. And this is more than just an elevator pitch. I'm not talking elevator pitches here. I'm talking a story. I'm now also talking about a laundry list of tasks. Like I did this and this and this. I'm not talking about that. I am talking about a story. If you remember when you were growing up in children's books and you started reading as a child, there was always a full story. You knew the characters, the protagonists, you knew the thing that they were battling or navigating the tension, and you knew the happily ever after. I'm talking about a story, one that shows how you think, how you lead, and what you bring that others may not be bringing. Okay. Now, the fourth thing are interviews. Whether it's an internal move or an external opportunity, interviews are storytelling competitions. Interviews are storytelling competitions. The person who can clearly articulate what they did, why it mattered, and what it took to do it, they are the ones who typically get the offer. Okay. So I want you to know that storytelling can be used in interviews. Don't settle for the bullet list of tasks that you did. Actually, tell a story. The fifth place that you can use stories are in networking conversations. So when you're at a networking conversation, you want to not just tell your job title, you actually want to give a description of your role or a story about the kind of problems that you solve and the impact that you create. This is going to be just chef's kiss if you can do this at a networking event with somebody, and not even a networking event. Sometimes you meet people in passing on over the weekend. You might meet a friend of a friend. They may ask you what you're doing. You may be somebody who does a lot of work at your children's school and they say, so what do you do? Be ready with a story. People want to know, who are you? Aside from the task that you do, but the impact and the story and the contribution you're making into the world. Now, the sixth thing are team meetings. So when you're sharing updates or recapping a project, don't just say what happens. You're going to frame that story. You're going to set up the stakes, like what was the stakes or the risk or what was at stake for that project. You're going to share what it took. You're going to name the impact, and you can do this all in 60 seconds, okay? And it will literally change how people perceive your contribution to whatever project it is. Again, there's a time and place to talk about what we did, but there's also a time and place to really communicate your individual contributions to whatever it is. And then last but not least, when you are advocating for a raise or a promotion, When you are doing this, this is not a time to be vague. This is a time to walk in with your strongest stories and make it so good that people can't even deny the raise or the promotion. So, you wanna talk about what you did, you wanna talk about what it cost and what changed, and this is literally the case that you're making. So, these are all the moments that you can use story. I'll just repeat it. Performance reviews, one-on-ones, skip level meetings, interviews, networking conversations, team meetings, and when you're advocating for a raise or a promotion. So the more you practice, the more natural it's going to become. Again, like I said, this is a skill. So that means you can learn it. That means you can build the muscle. And when you do this, you're going to start feeling like you're selling yourself. Although selling is a great skill to have for sure, but you won't feel the cringe and the griminess and the grossness that comes when someone says they're selling. And what will happen is you're going to start feeling like you're just telling the truth. You're like, yeah, this is what I do. This is who I am. This is what I did. This is the impact that I created. This is how this could be moved from this place to this place. This is how this is going to make sure that people have what they need, whatever it is. Okay. That's what you want to do. Now, the moment you've all been waiting on. Let me teach you the framework that I use with my clients. And I just call it simply like a storyteller framework. There's no fancy name or title for this. But I wanted to teach you this because it's super important that you have all of these things, these elements when you are telling your story. Okay. So, number one, you have to know the stakes. You have to communicate the stakes. Okay. Now, the stakes answer the question, what was at risk or what was broken or what problems existed before you stepped in. This, when you know the stakes, it creates the urgency. It gives your story some weight, some meat, some muscle, something to chew on. Because without stakes, your accomplishment sounds like a thing that just happened. But with stakes, it sounds like something that actually mattered. It was real. It needed to be focused on, it needed to be worked on. So before you talk about what you did, set the scene. Set the scene. Talk about what was going wrong. What was the gap? Talk about what was the risk if no one acted on this. Set the scene. Literally, like when you read a story, um, you literally I love books by Kristen Hanna, if anybody knows that author, and she has these really good books. And it's like historical fiction books, and she will literally set the scene where you can actually feel it and see it, and you're like, "Oh my god," like, I hope oh my god, like, it really sets the scene. That's what you want to do with your story when you're first starting out, because you wanna make the stakes clear. You want people to know this was at stake. Before I keep going, I wanna pause for just a moment. This episode is brought to you by my one-on-one leadership coaching for introverted women of color who are doing their best work but feel stuck when it comes to career growth, influence, and positioning. This isn't about motivation or productivity. It's about learning how to name where you want your career to go, understanding how leadership decisions actually get made, and positioning yourself for opportunities without becoming someone you are not. I work closely with a small number of clients at a time so we can focus on your relationships, your leadership identity, and the systems shaping your career trajectory. You can learn more about working with me one-on-one by checking the link in the show notes. And let's get back to the episode. Now, the second thing is you have to say your intention. Now, your intention answers the question, what did you decide to do? Or if the situation came to you, how did you choose to respond? This is where your agency shows up. This is where your decision making shows up. This is where your prioritization skills show up. This is where you go from being a bystander in your own story to being the one who made the move, the one who took action. There are two flavors of intention that I want to talk about. The first one is the proactive intention. And this is when you saw a gap and chose to act. So you see something, you're noticing what's happening, and you're like, this needs to be worked on. So, as an example, I work very heavily in my kids' school. I also sit on a school board. And, one of the things that was very clear to me was a structure put in place. When you're just kind of like the PTA president, you come in and you help and guide, things like that. You bring the parents together, you create some form of community. But it's really important that that's backed up with a structure. How are we setting up our meetings? What does it look like to have some type of governance process? Okay. So those are the things that you really want to make sure is like, what is the gap that you saw that you needed to close because it will make everything else smoother. It will make everybody's life just a lot better. Now, so that's proactive intention. Now, the second one is responsive intention. This is where you're put on a spot and you chose how to handle it. We could think of things like firefighters or police officers or doctors and nurses, and they have like something happens and they have to react really fast and you communicate how you're making decisions, why you chose to do the thing that you chose as you're talking about it. But you show that for both, whether it's a proactive intention or a responsive intention, you want to show your decision making, how you think through things, how you make decisions. Right now in our society, in our career, it is becoming it's a trend right now that it's a lot more important to show how you think versus showing your credentials, your skills, your tasks, and things like that. And so we really want to build this muscle of understanding how do we actually communicate? What's our thought process? How do we actually navigate the murky, the complexity, the messiness? How do you actually answer those things? Both of these things count because they both show leadership whether you are proactive or you're reactive, you have to show leadership in both of those things. And when you tell your story and you build this skill, you'll be able to tell this story very well. The third element that is important here for storytelling is the cost. Now, the cost answers the question, what did it actually take? What obstacles did you navigate? What effort, risk, or political capital did it require? Did you have to push through skepticism? Did you have to learn something new? Did you have to have an uncomfortable conversation? What's the barrier? What is the cost for doing what you did? Cost creates credibility. It actually shows people what it took for you. It shows how much you want it, how much you're willing to go to make sure things happen. This is what you want to communicate. And it prevents your win from sounding easy or lucky, like it just happened. And it shows that there was some real barriers. There were some real things that you had to go through, or there were some real things that you had to overcome for you to bring what you brought to the table. And so you want to be clear, what was the cost? Okay. The fourth thing is the impact. This one is probably the most important. This is the one that I always say, if you're not telling how you made an impact, it was just work. You were just doing it. You were not even moving the needle on anything. It was just work. It was just a task on your task sheet that you did. So when you communicate the impact, you're communicating what has changed. This is where you prove that this story, it wasn't just a feel good moment. It moved something. It made shifts in the society. It made a change in your organization. It helped somebody level up, get promoted. It helped you get promoted. Be very specific here. You can use numbers when you can. You could talk about what shifted, whether it's metrics, visibility, relationships. These things will help you actually communicate the impact. And remember, if you can't measure it directly, talk about what it unlocked. Okay. Maybe it was an experiment that you did. A lot of scientists or people in biotech, people that I work with, Maybe it didn't actually, you couldn't measure it, but it unlocked the ability to go try another experience that's gonna happen after that. And then really what became possible because of what you did. These are the things that show the impact. Arguably, I would say this is probably one of the most important ones, but definitely they're all important. They all are necessary for storytelling, but you gotta be able to show the impact for sure. Because when you show impact, that means that it can be replicated and repeated over time. It really does. And then the fifth element is resonance. This answers the question, why would your audience see themselves in it? Resonance is the me too factor. It makes your accomplishment feel very relevant, not just impressive. So, this is the moment that you want to actually tailor the message to the listener. Who are you talking to? Are you talking to the skip level boss? Are you talking to your boss? Are you talking to your peer? Are you talking to your direct reports? Who are you actually talking to? And what do they care about? What are they struggling with? How does your story connect to their world? When your story resonates, it sticks. It's like it sticks like when you put, when I put glue on a piece of paper, when I go get my nails done, I want to make sure the nail polish sticks to my nails. I want to make sure when I am creating a craft or artwork, I want to make sure that the glue sticks to the paper. It makes it stick because it's relevant, right? Is there anything else that we put nail polish on besides our nails? Maybe a run in a stocking or something like that? That's old school. I don't know who still wears stockings, but I know if you want to stop a run in your stocking, use some nail polish. That'll stop that thing right away. But we wanna make sure that the solution actually is relevant to what you're using it on or who you're presenting it to. So in this moment, you have to know, what does your listener actually care about? What are they struggling with? How does your story connect to their world? When your story resonates, it's going to stick, I promise you. And that's when it actually does something for you. Okay. So make sure your story is resonant. Now, there's one more thing that runs through all five of these elements, and that is connection. And connection is, it's like the characters. Who was involved? Who did they collaborate or who did you collaborate with? Who benefits? Who sees things differently now? Connection is not a separate step. It's actually woven throughout this entire framework. And it shows that you don't operate in a vacuum. So for those of you who are like, I can't walk into an interview and just talk about myself, I have to talk about the group. Well, I'm here to let you know that connection runs throughout it all. But the rest of the framework helps you frame this in a way that centers what you did. That's very important. That is very, very important. And it builds, when you can create the connection, it's going to build the relational capital that makes people want to advocate for you because now they know that you're a team player. Now they see how you gather people together. You brought a team together. You created a sprint team. You did these things in order to achieve what you achieved. But if you start off with like, okay, we all came together and we all did this and we did that and we did this and we all made the decision, like you are no longer centering the work that you did. And that's important in interviews, in your reviews, where you want to get a promotion or a raise. It's important that you do that. Okay. Let me show you what this looks like in practice. I'll give you just a quick demonstration of what this could look like so that you're able to do it as well, okay? So, I was working with a client recently. She is a mid-level manager at a large company. She's been there for years, and she's been doing just incredible work. But one of the things that has been a struggle for her is getting the recognition that she deserves. So, she just secured a major project. It's the first of its kind at this company, and it's an initiative that could actually influence how leadership makes decisions at maybe the global level. And when I asked her how she was going to talk about this in her reviews, how she was going to give the updates, to senior leaders or her peers, she actually did not have a clear answer. And she said she was just going to mention it and hope that her boss connected the dots because her boss is busy and they don't have time to listen and blah, blah, blah. So, what we did is we ran her story and what she did through this framework. So, first, I asked her, what are the stakes? Well, the stakes was the company was losing volume in a key market. There were partners that she knew that were either refusing to work with her or work with the organization or switching to competitors because the economics didn't make sense, the financials didn't make sense, and customers weren't getting the service they needed. And internally, no one was doing anything about it. Okay. So we set up the stakes. The second thing, I'm like, okay, so what's the intention? Well, she saw the gap. And instead of her waiting for someone else to act on it, she built a proposal. And it was a $200,000 project to identify exactly where customers were actually falling through the cracks. And she got it funded through an external source. So it didn't even touch her team's budget. Okay. So she saw the gap. That was her intention and she acted on it. The third thing was the cost. Now, this by no means was easy. She had to navigate the internal skepticism with the people who actually didn't think this type of work counted as real business impact. Like it's not on the job description. That's not real impact, right? But again, her intention was she saw the gap. So she had to get this external funding approved because no one was going to give her the budget because they didn't think this actually really matters. And so she had to position it in a way that aligned with company priorities, not just good intentions. So she figured out how to make this align. Hey, every company wants some revenue. They want ROI. They want more customers. That brings the money into the organization. So she was able to connect that dot. Now, the impact that she had is this was the first project of its kind ever approved at her organization. The senior leadership, 3 levels above her, now wanted the results to inform a company wide strategy. And now it has positioned her as someone who doesn't just care about doing the right thing, but who can connect it to business growth. What a great impact, right? What a it has unlocked, right? Because I didn't say any numbers, but it has unlocked the ability for this to be a company wide strategy. And then resonance was anyone tried to prove that their work actually drives revenue. This is the type of story that they need to tell. This is the type they can learn from her journey, from what she did, and actually try to replicate that to something else that they see as a gap that they would like to do. Okay. Now, you see the difference here? It's not bragging. It's just a clear, compelling story that shows exactly what she brought to the table. And now, when she walks into her review, I promise you, she's not going to hope that her boss notices or remembers. She's going to show him exactly what she did through her story. Okay. So let me break down what this framework actually can do for you. It adds clarity about your value. You stop second guessing whether what you did was enough and you see it laid out: stakes, intention, cost, impact, and resonance. Nobody can go against that. You see it laid out. It adds confidence and self-advocacy. So now that you have a structure, you don't have to wing it. Let's stop winging it. Let's be clear. Let's get prepared. Preparation is key here. You know exactly what to say and how to say it. It adds a repeatable system every time. This isn't a one-time thing. Every accomplishment, every review cycle that you go through, every opportunity that you have to advocate for yourself, run it through the framework. Just run it through this framework. It's going to help you. Your boss will stop guessing what you did. They don't have to wonder why what the work that you did matter. You are telling them. You no longer feeling cringe about it because you don't see it as bragging anymore. You're just framing the story in a way that can make sense to the listener. And when you have a structure, it doesn't feel performative. It actually feels professional. It feels like it's a professional thing. And it's gonna eliminate some like blank page panic. You know, the feeling when reviews are coming and you're staring at a document and you're trying to remember what you did 6 months ago. I promise you all of that is gonna be gone. If you are using this framework consistently, all of it is gonna be gone. Okay? You're no longer gonna have to have an email folder system that you know what I'm talking about, where you're, like, throwing these random emails into a folder and hoping that you can piece them together at the end of the year. That's not a strategy. This framework is a strategy. This way of storytelling in your career is a strategy, and it replaces hoping that somebody notices what you did because you're not leaving your career in someone else's hands, in someone else's decision-making power. You're not giving your agency away. So today, you're gonna start walking into your interviews with receipts, not anxiety, not like, "Oh my god, what I'm gonna say." You're gonna have stories ready. I remember when I was applying for a job years ago, and I literally took out a flip chart, had a whole bunch of sticky notes, and for every single bullet that was on the job description, I created a story. I said, if they ask me about this, this is the story that I'm gonna tell, and this is how I'm gonna tell it, running it through this framework. Literally, this is what I'm gonna do. You will know what to say, and you're gonna stop scrambling the night before trying to remember what you did. You stop second guessing whether your work is enough. And when you see it through the framework, you realize, yeah, that was significant. That actually matters. Wow. When I actually look at it and focus on it and break it down, that matters. Becoming the storyteller, the narrator of your career, it is a confidence booster. It makes you feel good about yourself. It makes you feel like you can walk into any room as an introverted woman of color and know exactly what to say. You're not gonna be this side character on the side where everyone else is saying what you did and they're communicating your impact. You're gonna be leading that effort. You're gonna be at the front. You're gonna be the one holding the pen of what you did, typing the manuscript of what you did. That's gonna be you. You will start to see many of the patterns in your contributions. And the more you use this framework, the more you create a brand for yourself. I know a lot of you are like, how do I create my personal brand? What am I known for? Once you start using this storytelling framework, you're going to start to see that it's going to emerge, and you're going to see that you're being recognized more, you're being compensated more, you're being promoted for what you actually bring, not because you're lucky, but because you made it so impossible to ignore that people are like, "Oh my god, I can't believe you did that. I had no freaking idea." That's what you want. Okay. So let's recap as we close out. The storyteller framework has 5 elements that should be included in your story every single time. And if you don't have all these parts, like first of all, I need you to really focus and try to figure out what were the parts. And second, I want you to ask, "Oh, was that just a task that needed to be done?" rather than something that really achieved business results. Cuz this storyteller framework would parse that out as well. So the 5 elements that are important here: stakes, that was what was at risk. Intention, what did you decide to do? Cost, what did it take? Impact, what changed? And resonance, why does it matter to your audience? And don't forget that connection runs all through that. It's like a lake going through 2 mountains. It's going to connect everything together. That's what I want you to see that as, okay? So I put together a one-page framework you can download. It's got all the 5 elements. It has the prompts to help you fill it out, and it has a checklist to run your stories through before you share them. You can grab it in the show notes, or you can DM me on Instagram, on LinkedIn. I'm there. You could join my email list. It's going to be coming to my email list. But on my Instagram, there's also a link where you can actually directly go and get it, and you'll get it right away. But here's your homework that I want you to do. Before your next one-on-one, pick one accomplishment, just one accomplishment. And I want you to run it through this framework. I want you to see what happens when you stop hoping that people notice what you do, hoping that your boss, hoping that your skip level manager sees what you, hoping that your peer sees what you do. Hell, you might have to run this storytelling framework with your partner, with your husband, with your kids, anybody. I'm telling you, this framework works, okay? And this will help you to start showing them the impact of what you're doing. Because as I said at the beginning, the best storyteller wins. And it's time for that to be you. I'll see you next week on Leadership Beyond the Title podcast. And remember, find out what leadership without titles means to you. Talk to you soon. Bye.